Pessoal, não vamos esquecer de acionar o sino.
Hello, fighters from the Art of War channel. I'm Commander Robinson military officer of the Brazilian Navy Reserve, and I present the Art of War channel, which is a vehicle for strategic, military, and geopolitical analysis carried out by professionals. So, if you're arriving now, subscribe to our channel, give your like, comment, share, and if you can contribute with super sticker or super chat, you will be helping the YouTube algorithm to locate us. If you live in United States, England, or other English-speaking countries, share it on your social networks so that we can reach an increasingly larger audience and take the vision that we Latin Americans have of geopolitical to audiences of other nationalities. That said, let's go to our video today. The mentality employed by the expanded West to defeat Russia is very similar to that which reigned in Hitler's head when he decided to invade the Soviet Union in 1941. In fact, Germany designed Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, based on the history of the Western campaign, where the following happened. They bombed countries like Holland or France, and the country fell within a few weeks, but the war in the West behaved in a completely different way. Hitler attacked the Soviet Union with all the fury of 3 million men in their respective armored divisions, but the surrender never came. As one author said, Paris fell like a lady and Moscow fought like a man. In addition, we need to remember that the war led by the Nazis in the East had a unique characteristic. Vernichtungskrieg, the German word for the war of extermination. The Germans' idea was not to spare anyone. Let's remember this article from the Washington Post that appears here on the screen. Let us not forget how the Soviet Union saved the world from Hitler. Well, as I said, this is the article from the Washington Post. It's from 2015 and says, don't forget how the Soviet Union saved the world from Hitler. And here he writes, by one calculation, for every single American soldier killed fighting the Germans, 80 Soviet soldiers died doing the same. The Red Army was the main engine of Nazism destruction, writes the British historian and journalist Max Hastings. It was the Western Allies' extreme good fortune that the Russians, not themselves, paid almost the entire butcher's bill for defeating Nazi Germany, accepting 95% of the military casualties of the three major powers of the Grand Alliance, writes Hastings. And this paragraph is also very good, as you see. And now, the Red Army was the main engine of Nazi destruction. And here they put a statement from General Eisenhower. I'll leave the link to the article in the description of this video. Truths like these disappear from the press after the invasion of Ukraine, but they can never be erased from the collective memory of the Russian people, who see the expanded West as the 3.0 version of Hitler and Napoleon. In contrast, politicians like Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron make the same mistake as Hitler by ignoring the Russian mentality. Moscow is not Warsaw, nor Amsterdam, much less Paris. The central idea of Joe Biden and his strategies is based on the premise that if there is too much pressure, Russia will crack from within. This is a complete mistake. The war is already halfway through its third year and Moscow shows no sign of slowing down. Quite the opposite. Its military industry continues to grow, volunteer mobilization are going well, and the Ukrainian economy is being devastated, while that the Russian counterpart is the fastest growing in Europe. Anyone who expected a campaign like that in Iraq, Grenada, or Kosovo broke their teeth. In the diplomatic field, the West's cause has not encouraged the so-called global souls, and parallel military movements such as Gaza, Taiwan, and some incidents in Africa are increasingly dividing the attention and the resources of the United States. The fact is that Biden and his allies still don't realize that they are fighting against. For Russia, it's an existential war, while for the West, what really exists is a false narrative that the results of the war in Ukraine will impact the way of life of their respective societies. The truth is that it doesn't change anything for average Rust Belt American who has lost his jobs if Ukraine's Russophone populations chose to stay with Russian sphere or turn to the Kiev government. That's not what's going to get your job. That's not what's going to get your job back. The fact is, societies in the United States and Europe still do not understand that they are paying dearly for a war that puts Europe at risk of a global conflagration for things that absolutely do not concern it. So far, this error in perception has cost them the efficiency of their respective economies, but in the future it could cost them and their childhood their lives in an unnecessary nuclear war. As you know, thousands of Americans are homeless now. The United States government wastes almost $1 trillion in weapons and defense in wars around the world, and our population has no health care. In Europe, people are paying more for the gas when years ago they paid much less for the Russian gas. This is a war that doesn't make sense for the average American or European. It's a war, it's a problem with Russians and Ukraine. Russians and Ukrainians have years of coexistence, and this will not change. It's not a problem for Americans or Europeans like French, Germany, or England. It's their problem, and they have to solve this question with diplomacy. It's not a problem for the collective West. They made this war to weaken Russia, but the things are not going very well, not like their plans. Well, the plan didn't work. What are we going to do now? Let the war into a nuclear war against Russia? I don't think it's the smartest decision. It's time to change the approach before it is too late.